couple of conversations ago, I talked to Administrative Results about what he is doing with GunTube, how he sees GunTube developing. And I have another conversation with another prestigious GunTuber. Welcome back to T-Rex Talk. In some ways, I'm hopeful that you already know this guest. He may be a little bit less famous than Administrative Results, but brass facts. Can you introduce yourself? I actually don't know how long you've been doing the YouTube game, because when I discovered you, you already had a large library of videos. So when did things start for you as far as like content generation goes?
Yeah. Hey guys, brass facts. No,
yeah, do the podcast bit. Yes, yeah.
Yeah. I'm so for the introduction part, I'm just when I started, I was an engineer, finishing up college, kind of transitioning into my life as an engine nerd. But at some point during that, well, my job was like, hey, we just got hit. It was a smaller company where we just got hit by. We need to implement budget cuts because our contract didn't go through, right? Because it was a small engineering firm and it lives off the contract. So they were going to let me go, but whenever I wanted, basically. And I was looking at YouTube. I'm like, hey, I could take a leap of faith here at this point and do it. So that was the Brass Facts channel officially started, and the first video dropped shortly thereafter. I remember at SHOT Show. It was the SHOT Show where COVID, so it's 2020, right? Or 2019. I always get it mixed up.
I remember that SHOT Show very vividly because that was the sickest I've ever been on the way back. I didn't know I was going to make it.
Yeah, so I'm close enough that I drive, but I remember we were coming back with the friend I went with to go pick up my dog, and we filmed. The first video was a pursed laser video, and we filmed it in the backyard of my parents' house because it got dark enough up there. So that's how nice. I remember when the first video dropped, because it dropped a couple days later. So that was, sweet. I think that means it was 2019. And I did that, and then I think it really became a job. Like I left my engineering, I finished my degree and all that stuff around 2022-ish, if I recall right.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so you have a different focus than some. I don't even really technically think of myself as a YouTuber. I actually feel very ungrateful sometimes when I'm talking to you or admin, and you guys have, launched your, you have made a career out of YouTube. And I'm just like, I have this day job and I'm trying to make videos. I'm just trying to crank out videos. I'm not trying to do this properly. I'm not trying to necessarily give the people what they want. I'm just trying to squeeze a video in and amongst the regular stuff. This Friday's video is going to be that. It's literally just like, I have a little bit of time on the way to the airport. Now I'm in the Uber. Oh, I didn't actually have time. I barely made it to the airport. And so the YouTube video is short and very much a byproduct of stuff. But what is your goal with the channel? Because there's a lot of GunTube out there. There's a lot of people who focus on entertainment. There's a lot of people who focus on very specific gear reviews. And by specific, I mean whatever they can get paid to do. You have one of the more practical. I've been trying to figure out different ways to describe your channel, but practical is probably the best descriptor that I've come up with when you talk about stuff, even stuff that looks kind of esoteric or trendy, like force reset triggers. You have a super practical approach that you want to do with the videos.
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways to answer that. I think when the channel was formed, the way or the goal or the objective was, I just wanted to review things and talk about things in an honest fashion. I actually think Lucas had a similar thing. You watched YouTube and you start, as the young grasshopper, and it's like, oh, YouTube is great. I was watching Nothing Fancy. I was watching, whoever the greats were at the time, right? Long list.
The old masters.
Yeah. And at first, it was great. I learned a lot. But as you went into deeper sources, I began to realize a lot of it wasn't very good. And you also begin to pick up on certain things. And I wasn't very happy with a large percentage of the reviewing community when it came to reviewing stuff. I think they weren't as critical as I believe they could be, analytical. There was a lot of just like what I call reading the back of the manual, but now the gun's on the table and they're
Yeah.
still reading the back of the manual. It's like, well, I can read the back of the manual anyway. So that was the original goal of the channel, was to like bring something more to the table, because I would buy the product, right? Because I was very into guns, even though I couldn't afford to be into them. And I'd be like, what the hell? This isn't, this isn't that. So eventually I was like, screw it,
Mhm.
I'll make it myself. Not necessarily because I believed I would ever make it. I, in fact, did not believe I could make it. But it was more just like a pressing need of like, oh, I got to get this out so I can at least say I said, my
Mhm.
view,
Yeah.
right? Even if no one ever sees it. And I had practice making video stuff. So, editing and filming content was like, it's probably not as big of a bridge for me as it is for most.
Mhm.
The channel has kind of gone from there. As I started integrating maybe philosophy preparedness content, if you want to call that, so pointing to the FRT trigger into, it's a very saturated market. And I do think you're right, right? It's sort of zero-sum game-ish. There's only so many views to go around. Um, so my perspective in this preparedness style content is to come at it from the perspective of and the industry's gotten better at this, and perhaps I had a small part in it. But to be civilian oriented, right? Very aggressively
Mhm.
civilian oriented. I don't really care
Mhm.
about the
Yeah.
military. But, and this was a thing that was an issue, everyone that used to be civilian oriented was hyper civilian oriented of, you're not going to use an AR out of 25 yards because statistically speaking, you're not. I'm like, okay, that's
Right.
in normal times, that's absolutely correct. But I want to take it from the civilian perspective in non-normal times: loss of rule of law, loss of monopoly and violence, collapse of certain government areas, perhaps loss or ceding of power of the government. So moving up the chain. Though I do certainly still cover just very basic preparedness stuff as well. For hey, maybe you should not be in debt or something like that. But then, I go up the escalation up the pyramid, so to speak. And that was something I noticed was lacking, right? It was either we're preparing to be civilians, which means you have a handgun and maybe a rifle that for some reason has an LPVO on it, even though the reviewer very obviously believes he will never use that beyond 25 yards, which is just a complete dissociation of what
Right.
he's preaching and doing. And then
When I
the
like
other
to
end
shoot
has,
stuff up close, I definitely want to do it through a long tube. Yeah.
yeah. And then the other end was, oh yeah, I'm a prepared civilian, or a prepared citizen, but all I'm doing is infantry, like one alpha drills or whatever. And it's like, okay,
Mhm.
there's a bit of a disconnect there. And that was a long answer, but that's kind of where I want to kind of squeeze in. It's the
Mhm. Yeah.
blending of both of those.
Yeah, and connecting some dots for people, I think, as well, because you do bring this philosophical thoughtfulness to the what ifs that I think is really helpful. So I kind of had this conversation totally outside of the individual preparedness when I was having the meetings in Washington earlier that we talked about before I started rolling. So that there really should have been a better segue to those. So the problem is I haven't recovered from my trip yet, so
Yeah.
it's going to be a slightly disconnected thing. But
Oh, yeah.
this concept that we talk about at T-Rex called the citizen defense industry, like explaining why that should exist to senators can be a little tricky. But fortunately, I was talking to Bill Haggerty, and he's a more switched on guy than most. So he started the conversation off talking about Douglas MacArthur rebuilding all of Japan's industry essentially in a generation or two after World War II. And so I talked about this fact that we have this super um, bifurcated system where we have kind of sporting good gun industry down here, and then we have military industrial complex up here. And there's a huge swath in the middle where historically 90% of your population lives in here, or experiences this, or thinks about this, or has gear in here. And right now we just are either here or here. And so that's kind of one of my I'm trying to figure out better ways of explaining this kind of in a larger sense. And historically, lots of people spend a huge amount of their time in here, either supporting professional soldiers in some capacity or finding themselves doing the work of professional soldiers in another capacity. Like that is the norm for humans. And it's, having to deal with nothing worse than a mugger or a chance in 1,000 that you have to deal with a mugger. Like That's actually a bizarre kind of anomaly that you live in a world where you're that safe or that isolated from issues.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's a kind of double factor thing, right? We are both preparing for a hypothetical, but I think there's also the self reliance aspect that I really
Yeah.
come to appreciate. That like I'm okay admitting that maybe this will never be used, but like the skills I cultivate, the mindset it takes to go from well, I guess I die. If I die, I die, right? Uh, but instead going from that and being like, hey, I'm going to take responsibility for my own life beyond just that mugger is I
Hmm.
think an empowering thing. Like just dude stuff, right? Except it's not just dudes, but it's kind of
Yeah.
reminds me of that.
Yeah. Well, it's civilization building stuff. We were also talking about that before we hit record, but just like I don't know, the odds of me having to use this stuff to defend my neighborhood tomorrow, ridiculously small. The odds of in the more distant future, my kids having to confront this stuff drastically higher. It's really easy to say, like, this situation that you described earlier with like loss of government uh, services or collapse of certain infrastructure, like that's a thing that Americans have never had to worry about except 1860s and 1770s and 1690s and 1680s and 1670s and 1660s. Like it's more statistically likely that my kids are going to have to deal with this in the future. So building some of this preparedness mindset, building some of this citizen defense industry, building some of this alternative infrastructure, like there's gonna be value to that in the future, even if I don't cash in on it right away.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of our duty, so to speak, or as American, citizens, to make sure this stuff is normalized. Because I'm sure you remember, like, YouTube has been an absolute like boon for this thing. So you kind of go
Mm,
back and there was FPS Russia, and the mechanism there was like, oh, dudes like messing with these really fancy guns and stuff, but it's still entertainment and
yeah,
like that. Then you had the original. I hate the term GunTube, and I think Admin said that too. But GunTube kind of
the
started to
worst.
emerge, and at first it was very fun, and then it kind of morphed into very infantry focused stuff, like very high round counts expected. I wear 27 magazines around my butt cheeks, right? Like very, very infantry focused. And anyone that had a word had to be in the military at some point, right? There were very few non
Yeah,
military guys that were allowed to speak. And then we saw it morph from there to the point where it's not popular to talk about GT as much now, but he has a clip that was very stark to me in one of his videos where he is filming himself, you know, um, with drones. And I don't remember the exact thing, but he goes up to what is very clearly an American serviceman because he's got the American flag on it and plugs him into the ground, right? And it's like the mindset shift for the one of the biggest GunTube channels to do that, and for the comment section to be like, yeah, that tracks, is a big shift of where
yeah,
we've gone. And I think that's, for good or bad. I think it's mostly for good, though I'm sure there are some downsides that come along with that kind of
yeah.
mindset. That's a good thing because one day this won't be for funsies on the internet with really nice bokeh lenses and slow motion and gratuitous exploding gel targets. And
Hmm.
to make sure the foundation exists, that they don't have to start from ground zero and build it up. I'm not saying we started from ground zero, but there has been a lot of building in the last 15 years that they have all the tools available to them, maybe even rocket launchers, who knows, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, it's been fascinating. I mean, I've talked about this with a bunch of people, just the way that gun culture has sort of developed. Like I remember when I first watched uh The Art of the Dynamic Carbine or whatever it is that the first Magpul video,
Oh, yeah.
the first DVD series was The Art of the Tactical Carbine was kind of mind blowing to me because it was exactly what I always wanted. And I also knew like you're not allowed to do this. And the fact that they did this thing that you're not allowed to do just opened up the horizon of the sort of stuff that was acceptable to do and to talk about. And you know, I had known that I wanted to know this stuff. Like this was the firearm application that I was most curious about and had kind of heard about the fringes of from like old Vietnam guys that I knew back, growing up as a kid, the Vietnam vets had this mysterious combat experience allure. So I wanted something more than just the concealed carry VHS tapes at gun shows, but I knew that nobody was allowed to make that stuff. And so when Magpul made that stuff, it's like, oh, you're allowed to make this stuff now. Like everybody's horizons just got that much wider.
Yeah, and the Magpul, I think a lot of people probably don't appreciate as much nowadays of how big of a deal the Magpul stuff was, because it was pretty high level stuff. It actually holds up decently well. I
Yeah.
think we're not quite holding rifles like this anymore.
No more
Um,
C-clamps, I
yeah,
hear,
no more
yeah.
C clamp, and that was a lot of 16-inch rifles with T2s and one flashlight and a sling on it. That was. I mean, nothing wrong with that, but we've come a long way. Night vision. A lot more people are wearing
Right.
body armor. They were mostly on belts back then, but yeah, it's insane how much that did. Also, the bloopers from that Magpul DVD is comedy gold.
It's pretty classic, yeah. Yeah, so it's interesting to see, yeah, the continuation and YouTube has some significant benefits and some problems. Like obviously, YouTube is huge for normalization, despite the platform not being super friendly. Um, it's a little bit of a mixed bag there. I love the fact that there is the economics of YouTube are such where everybody's trying to come up with a new thing. And that's kind of cool. But then also with the downside of like we're very quick to trash stuff like the C clamp or various other things that were trendy at the time. And so there's a little bit of a downside to that too. Hey, if Chris Costa can make it work, man. Uh,
Dude, him and
the
that Japanese thing where he's doing it. Oh, best one of the best clips of all time.
there were there were action figures of those guys back then, if you recall. It's kind of crazy,
Maybe,
but
yeah,
yeah,
that was my formative years.
the
So yeah,
the need for novelty is a blessing and a curse. And uh, the YouTube platform is kind of a blessing and a curse too. So how do you try to stay in the in the good side? Where you want your content to stand out, but you're not doing stuff that is just novelty for novelty's sake.
yeah. I mean, I think I think certainly people think that, some people may think that I'm like trend chasing or something like that. But generally, I wasn't quite sure what you were getting there at a second, because that's not really how I view
Yeah.
video topic generation. To me, it kind of filters down from the top. It's like, what am I interested in? I'm
Yes.
very, very ADHD focused or type of person. So I have like 14 gorgillion ideas. So I have this Excel sheet that has like tiers of stuff as ideas simmer down. Um, and I'll throw
I
like
use OneNote, but it's the same concept.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So there's the column that has ideas. It's like it's like closing in on 100 lines of stuff, and sometimes they go from there to a more refined area where I build out blocks of things. And then from there, it goes into a video. It kind of comes at from both ends because, for example, hey, I got into long range, and then I built a bolt gun, and that'll pull ideas underneath it. And then that'll kind of be a review block because YouTube is very expensive if it's coming out of your own pocket. So I need to bundle
Yeah.
ideas. So for me, like the way I figure out what I want to make is just stuff I'm interested in. And I kind of let my mind go wild, and I come up with, let's just pretend 10 topics, right? And from there, I've developed an okay understanding stuff that I'm going to be interested in that no one else gives a shit about, or a notable number of people don't care about. And I'm like, okay, I care about that. Maybe I'll bring it up as a point in a video, but that doesn't make the cut. And then I will narrow it down. And then some of the key of making a good video is packaging it properly, right? There are some ideas that are great or very boring, but can be packaged to be interesting. And there are some ideas that are very interesting that can be packaged just completely snooze festy. And then no one will watch it. I'm sure, especially as you're very educational focused, not very flashy. So you have this issue, I'm sure, where it's like you have to make a very complex and topic interesting, right? And it's sort of the same here, though, to a lesser degree. So that's kind of really what I do, which is why I was confused about the thing. The way you phrased it, not against
Yeah.
what you're saying. I don't really chase trends. I do what I find is interesting, and then I distill it down, and I jettison stuff that I
Yeah.
know probably won't be interesting. But at the end of the day, any video you see, um, I'm interested in some form, be it in a review. I'm curious. I'm a gun nerd, right? I like products, even products I know I'm never going to keep. I'm curious how that's going to do.
Yeah.
Topics like philosophy stuff that probably was stuck in my brain while I was driving out to the range or
Hmm.
driving somewhere, and it kind of just manifested and grew, and eventually it became a topic.
Yeah. Now, the thing is though, YouTube is your business. Like that is your, is that your main job? Do you have freelance or contract stuff on the side, or are you pretty 100% on YouTube?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, YouTube is supported by income streams, but at the end of the day, they all trace their lineage back to the YouTube channel. Yeah. So when I left
Gotcha.
my
Yeah.
engineering job, yeah, now we're all in on YouTube.
Yeah. So the fun thing for me is that I have a regular T-Rex day job still. So uh, I know that every one of my videos that I have made could be made to be interesting to people. And some of them, you look at the view count and you're like, oh, he did the work to make that interesting. And then in other videos, you look at the view count and you're like, he did not work to make that video interesting. He just had an idea, made it for himself, and he was too busy that week to give it much thought.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, there's a
but
little bit
you
more
don't
to that.
have that luxury
Yeah.
that I do to just kind of like cruise for a little while and then be like, oh, it's time for a video where people actually want to watch it.
Yeah. Well, in fairness, it's a little worse than that because it's not just make it interesting. You also have to package it and make it look tasty,
Yes.
which is the
Yeah.
thumbnail and the title, right? And the thesis statement in the opening 30 seconds. I'm terrible at that because I will not shut up. So my openers take way too long. But there's also that aspect, right? And sometimes a
Yeah.
very interesting topic and a very interesting video that was done really well dies because the thumbnail and the
Yeah.
image don't do well.
I have a thermal video that I spent a ton of time on. I thought the title was great. I thought the thumbnail was great, and it has like 30,000 views. Meanwhile, a video on a similar topic that just has a cheap Amazon camera lens that I wanted to try out, that's like one of the best performing videos in the channel. And it's content wise, it is nothing compared to the thermal video where we did all kinds of cool comparisons of thermal and different spectrums and After Effects graphics that took forever. People just like, whatever, I just want to watch the telescope video.
I can tell you that right now for any prospective YouTubers watching, videos on the thermal device itself do like that. None of them perform well. People
Everybody says they want
understand
thermal, but they don't want to watch thermal
they don't
videos.
want to watch the thermal video, which to be fair, thermals are very unapproachable in terms of like being able to listen to a video and then you start talking like, yeah, so this is a Rattler 384 to 32 core, whatever. And it's like your brain just goes, and you lose
Yeah.
a viewer, right? So
That's still better than my video where it's going to be like, the microbolometer was originally developed back in the early 80s. Yeah.
that's funny because Hop did a video and I remember him messaging me. It's like, what the fuck is a microbolometer? And then it makes it to the video. It's like, there's a microbolometer in here. Here's the wiki post. I don't care. And he ships it onto there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's funny.
So the one fun thing that I have had recently, like the last video that we posted was on fiber optic stuff, and it was like, I don't really understand how this works. Here's 3 applications for fiber optics, which are cool, and people need to work on these. I got a couple of emails from companies who are like, we're working on that. Would you like to see stuff? So when that happens, it's just awesome. Sometimes videos are like bait. I throw them out there, just be like, do people like this? Is somebody doing this? I don't
Yeah.
understand this, but if people correct me in the comments, I'm going to get educated.
Yeah, that's the tales all its time. If you want to figure out something, say it wrong, and the internet will correct you. Yeah, you can't ask. You
Yes.
have to
Yeah.
say it wrong. And yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So as you have you bring with you a thoughtfulness that I kind of I didn't know that your background was engineering, but I totally get it. Like I totally see that. That makes perfect sense. If you'd asked me ahead of time what I thought your job was, I probably would have engineer would have been in my top 3 guesses.
and poli
I
sci.
think that yeah.
I
So
got 2 degrees because I'm stupid and not very good at college.
well, the fun thing is, I actually believe that that's a fantastic blend because engineers, much as people want to pick on the stereotypes of engineers, and they're embarrassingly accurate, engineers are attached to the real world in ways that modern society is not, and that is a huge advantage. In more ways than just building stuff or making automation tooling. I really think that speaking of philosophy, I really think that the modern world has been done a disservice by postmodernism is probably the blanket way to put it, and people are just not really connected with reality, and that's part of the reason that engineers have such a hard time in the real world. Is they're like, this is how stuff works, and people are like, no, I'm pretty sure I'm allowed to just like feel differently about things. They're like, nope, this is the metallurgy, and it's a science.
Yeah, yeah, that's a thing. Yeah, it's an
Yeah,
interesting blend for sure because my passion is definitely political science. Not, I think most people hear political science, and think of like campaign trails or whatever. But the part that I was
mhm,
interesting was international relations, state on state action, warfare, diplomacy, and all that stuff, and why states go to war, why states don't go to war. So that was all the stuff I wanted to do. It turns out it doesn't pay the bills all that well, and eventually went back for engineering, which I find interesting, but not at the same level I thought poli sci was interesting. So I did both of
yeah.
those just in time for me to go throw it all away and do a YouTube channel. So
I think it's a cool
yeah,
basis for a YouTube career, thinking about the whys and the hows simultaneously. It's also theoretically a great springboard into high level military industrial complex stuff. If you could figure out how to leverage it just right, like go to the right people and be like, I know why people go to war, and I know how to build really good war machines. So just plug me into your administration, please.
yep, yeah, and make 6 4 jillion dollars in a day.
Yeah, well, see, this is the disadvantage with the citizen defense industry is it makes things affordable, which is great for the people at the bottom, but it's not so good for the people at the top. So, yeah, my citizen defense industry concept has not been looked favorably upon by anyone who's being paid by Lockheed Martin.
Okay, yeah, yeah, I think
I haven't quite figured that one out.
yeah, what weird, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I almost got a job with because when I was leaving that position, obviously I had to throw out some applications, and there's a lot of there's L3 down here. There's
Oh, yeah.
um, a number of air BAE. Applied to a bunch of those, but no, they we went down this route instead, which is it's pretty fun. I'm not oblivious to the fact that me going to shoot guns twice a week is not pretty cool. So
Yeah, it's, well, I mean, I think admin mentioned this as well. Aaron was talking about how YouTuber is like the top 5 desired job amongst young people nowadays. So you get a YouTuber job where you get to shoot guns a lot. It's pretty neat. Yeah.
it is pretty neat. I'm a little more limited in the sense that I have to justify my guns within a probably
Right.
much tighter budget, but as well as they need to be objective driven, right? I keep wanting to get a lever gun, but I'm like, what the hell is that video, man? Like, there's no
I know,
video
right?
there. So I can't
Yeah.
justify buying that. I think the bolt gun, honestly, I got a really nice bolt gun, a really good deal on it, and that was probably the most splurgy thing I've ever done because it's also much more limited in terms of
Mhm.
application compared to just a semi-automatic, of the same
Yeah.
caliber.
Yeah.
Right.
No, part of the reason that I am planning to get a bolt gun, I still haven't gotten around to it yet, but is because it doesn't have any immediate work applications, and so it can be a fun gun. I don't think I have some 22s that are fun guns, but even those I turned into a couple of videos. So the lever gun is a fun gun to shoot with the kids that doesn't have an immediate YouTube video that it has to show up in.
You
So
say
that's the
that, but you're
idea.
going to shoot it, and the tendrils are going to infect the
I'm
gun,
gonna
and
have
then
an idea. Yeah.
uh, yeah,
I'm gonna build out a full
the lever
cowboy
gun
rig.
POU concept.
Yeah.
So it happens, right? Because I'm not sure about you, but from what I've seen, it's kind of like that. This industry at least kind of has a tendency for people that immerse themselves into it. It does become a large part of them. So I think Admin was talking
Yeah.
about it. It's hard not to take home because it is you now, right? Like this is a huge part of what I
Yeah.
do. Um,
And because it is an idea thing, it does. There's also a game theory aspect to it. Like I mentioned before, like my videos don't technically need views. Like I'm not dependent on the ad revenue for videos. But if I have a dry patch where I make 3 videos that nobody likes in a week, and I'm watching the little graph. I'm like, okay, we
Yeah.
got to pull the graph back up. We got to like, I want to see the graph come up. So I'll make a video. I'll invent another P90 that people will like that. I know. I already know that what they want. So
Yeah, that's funny.
yeah.
YouTube came out with that thing a while ago now where they're like, we removed thumbs up and thumbs down so YouTubers wouldn't feel so bad about themselves. But for those that don't know, there's another section in YouTube that says this video is performing X relative to your last videos. And when you see that 10 out of 10 and you hover over it and the video is clearly like a 20 out of 10, you're like, wow, I might jump off a bridge. Like it's not, it's,
Yeah.
you do get caught up in how your videos do because you invest a lot of time, soul,
Oh,
and
exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
I start off doing videos where I'm like, look, this, this one isn't going to perform, but it's a message. We're going to get it out there. And then I'm like, I spent a lot of time on that. That thing deserves some more eyeballs. What's going on? What's going on, YouTube? What's the
Yeah.
shadow ban for? But because of that, because it kind of gets under your skin and you keep coming back to the graph and you keep looking at it, and you're like, 4 out of 10, that's not bad. And then you're like, we're only 1,000 from 3 out of 10. Let's check on it in an hour. And then 15 minutes, you're looking at it again. All right, let's check on it another hour. 15 minutes, you're back again. But the same thing happens with your ideas where you're like, all right, you find yourself in the middle of a conversation with somebody, and then you realize the back of your mind is thinking about lever guns. Like that happens.
Yep, yep, yep. I have for those that use Discord, I have my own Discord channel. I'm the only one in it, and it's just a giant notepad where I send myself images and write down ideas. You can scroll through it,
Ah,
and there's
yeah.
just schizophrenic postings where the autocorrect didn't quite kick in. And it's like, I don't know, lever gun city blur and whatever. So yeah, it's constantly a churning thing of coming up with new ideas, a lot of them not making it, and then kind of just going from there. It's definitely a very creative process for sure.
Yeah. I wonder if all people used to be creative like this, and over the last 100 years, our jobs just have largely been so uncreative that most people used to struggle with this, and now it's only a few folks who really have this level of um, creative outlet that really pulls them into this terrible sort of state where you can't keep your mind on one thing or engage with people because you're busy thinking about how to make the lever gun video work.
Yeah. At this point, I got to, yeah, maybe. I mean, it could absolutely be true. It could also just be that, it's like I said earlier, it's kind of like a zero sum game, and I would imagine people probably got more creative over time because you have
Mhm.
more time to spend towards creative thought, but. Only a certain percentage of the population can like work that muscle day in and day out.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. So I was doing YouTube stuff before the Brass Wax channel. So I've been, and I've always been like a very, like when I walk to school, I have fantasies going on in my head and I'm making whole kinds of stories. So I've kind of exercised that muscle a bit. So I'm probably not,
yeah,
like most things I do, I'm probably not actually very good at it. I just have a lot of reps or, exercising of that muscle. So I don't think I'm inherently like a hyper creative person by any means, just ADHD with a little bit of practice.
yeah. There's a famous John Cleese speech where he talks about creativity, and he basically says, it's creativity is just playing with an idea. And there's people who are comfortable with the playing with the idea stage, and there's people who are not comfortable with it. And how good you are at coming with ideas is completely unrelated to those two things. There's some guys who are great, but they're just not comfortable in that space. There's people who are not very good at creativity, but they love being in the space and playing in the space, and just the sheer amount of flexibility that they have tinkering and playing with concepts means that they will actually outperform some of the other brilliant people who just want to be in a different zone, just want to be in the working zone and not in the playing with idea zone. So I think it's always going to be a personality thing to it as well. Um, yeah. So anyway, it's kind of interesting.
Yep. Yep.
So on, do you want to talk about any ideas? Do you want to workshop any ideas? Do you want to
I
like
guess I can pull
tinker
up
with
my
any
Excel sheet here.
concepts?
What do we
Do you
got
want to
here?
do you want any ideas that you would actually this is something that I've been thinking about a little bit. I have some ideas that I want somebody else to do, and I just haven't found it hasn't popped into my mind like, oh, this is a video that somebody so and so should go do. Like I want somebody who is a lawyer or a statistician or a criminologist to make a video on when you find a crime gun and it has a serial number attached, like, what does that do? Like, how often does that actually solve crimes? Because gun control advocates tell us, like, guns have to be in a registry to stop crime from happening, which obviously it doesn't stop the crime from happening.
Yeah.
But how often does it actually help solve the crime? Like, I want somebody to make that video. Like, I have a
That
handful of these
James Reeves?
videos and I
That James
don't know
James
who
Reeves
makes
get
them.
over
Yeah.
there? Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's that James Reeves kind of breaking a little bit off of TFB TV. I don't know if you know, but he's a lawyer and he has his lawyer channel.
yeah, that's a good point. That's a great point.
So,
Yeah.
so you should go hit him up with that. He might have the tools to actually look into something like that, or even know where to
Yeah.
start. I don't know where to start. My life is Google Scholar.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't. These are the things where, like, I've asked a couple of cops, and you're like, oh, you just ping this, and this comes back. I'm like, how often does it actually solve the case? And they're like, well, just the DA might know. So,
Yeah, I imagine.
I don't like to talk to DAs. I think it's a bad idea.
Oh, well, I wonder why. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Do you have any videos like that where, like, you have an idea for a video that you want to watch but you don't want to make?
oh, I have a lot of videos that I don't want to make because it's way too much work, and then I bully myself in overtime to work on it. The FRT was one, like, not to be that guy. I think I was really on that really early on. That was a pre-shot show thing.
You were.
Well,
So I had a super safety lying around and I was like, this is going to be the FRT video. And when I saw your video, I was like, oh man, no, this is the FRT video. What's our FRT video going to be about? It'll be about legal loopholes because it's Brass
right, but
Facts has
even that
made the
video was
FRT
really
video
late,
now.
right? Even that video was really late. There were, I think, 4 or 5 major YouTubers that had already covered FRTs at that point. I'm so because I started last year, and FRTs are such a pain. It's a lot of ammunition, and then I got the belt fed, and the stupid thing didn't work for like 6 months because M27 links suck. So actually, I was majorly behind the power curve on that one, and I kind of dragged my feet on it, and then I really regretted it, and then banged it out, and it like did the last like 2,000 rounds of that in 2 weeks. It was a little brutal, but some videos I want to work on. One that I really am not enjoying making, but it's called like the percentage chance of SHTF or something to that effect. Title needs workshopping.
Yeah.
But kind of get into, you start at the bottom. It's like, how likely is a citizen going to get mugged, right? And then we can assign an arbitrary upper bounds and lower bounds, and then you hike it up one level. It's like, how likely is someone in X part of the country to get slammed by a hurricane? And that's probably below the whatever. And you get an upper bounds and a lower bounds, and then you start taking it up. It's like, how often do governments, regress from a democracy to something else? And then you get an upper bounds and a lower bounds. And you go on, and you move up the food chain. And then you get into hypotheticals, and you look at the subcomponents of that. And that was a really brutal video to do because I'm pretty sure you could turn that into a full-on thesis. And it's a lot of, and I'm only like halfway through it, and I keep putting it down and don't look at it for months. So if someone else could do that for me, that'd be great. Just, yeah.
Well, I have a recommendation. There's a guy whose real name I just forgot. I do know his real name, but his Substack is hand-waving freakoutery. So he specializes in hand-waving freakoutery, but he's a statistician. And I believe he's already done all the math for the how often do governments collapse and countries fall apart. And it's one of those numbers where statistically, the chance is 0 unless you wait long enough, and then it becomes 100%. Like it's
weird how percentages work, right? Yeah. Or people kind of have the human condition views percentages as like, if something has a 5% chance, I need to do it 20 times, but that's not how statistics work, right? It's 5% chance every time, 1 in 20, right? So that was a video, and then
anyway, he's a resource. He's a friendly guy. He's a pro gun guy. He is part of, I forget exactly how exactly he's attached, but he's part of Open Source Defense, that crew. So he's an interesting guy. I think he used to work, I may be mixing a couple people up, but I'm pretty sure he used to work for Ars Technica back when it was still a cool technology website.
Okay.
And but the statistics of disaster kind of interesting. I also know a guy who works at the University of Georgia's Mass Casualty Department. Be an interesting person to talk to. But his job is to always assume the worst. That's what you do at the Department of Mass Casualties.
Yeah, yeah, gotta write them SOPs up.
Yep. Yeah, so we worked on a project together that was radiological in nature, and it was specifically a nuclear strike in DC. So anytime I visit DC, I'm looking at like different streets and buildings, and I'm like, yeah, yep, that's exactly how it was modeled. Yep, that's how that goes. Yeah,
That's probably a very exciting and gruesome job.
yeah,
Yeah, because I think,
it's interesting.
yeah,
Yeah. I don't know that I want to go into a lot more detail on a
yeah,
podcast that's going to be publicly available on the internet, but
that's kind
radiological
of cool.
events are interesting. Um, yeah. So, yeah, I like the sound of that video, though. That's a video that I want to watch.
See, that's a
Statistical
video I want to
breakdowns of
watch as
stuff.
well. I don't want to make the video. That was
Yes.
supposed to be
Yeah.
done before I went off to NRAM, and it's not progressing.
Yeah.
The version that led to that was how many people have night vision, and that one's been a very tough one to kind of tackle because
Oh,
L3
yeah.
has no desire to tell you how many extra tubes they handed out, and the vast majority are in the military. So we exist as a fraction of a percentage of that. Um, so it's a very
We're
difficult one to
growing.
answer, but it's a really important one to answer because a lot of my topics originate from because a lot of it used to be like very fudlory, but a lot of people are going to be like, oh, why do what's the point of using a laser aiming module? Everyone has night vision. Or do they, right? Like, how many people do actually
Right.
have
Yeah.
night vision? And then you get into the bits of like, okay, well, in an event, they kind of like rise to the top because people with night vision are probably more equipped to survive a certain amount. Who knows? But
Yeah.
the base question you need to answer is what, percentage of the population actually has a night vision tube? How many have been sold? Or I think that's probably the way
Yeah.
to tackle it. But that one's also been tough. I've gotten a very high upper
Mm.
bounds and a very low lower bounds. I think it's like 50,000 is the very very like minimum, and then something like 500,000 represents the upper end. Lower six figures is what I've heard, but
Hmm.
then some
Yeah.
people are like, no, a million, and it's like I don't know if it's a million, but it's a much lower
Yeah.
number than you think, than most people would.
Right.
We forget this is like a big eye-opening thing for me was on GunTube we I think it was either not Springfield, probably Smith and Wesson came out with a gun, and I looked at that gun, I'm like, wow, that's a stupid gun, right? It's an AR-15, it's equipped in a very lame way, no one's gonna like that. And then we talked to the Smith and Wesson, or Hop talked to the Smith. No, none of those guys want to talk to me. Hop talked to the Smith and Wesson guy, and he's like, oh yeah, this is our best-selling model yet. And you got to remember, time and again, our little bubble on Instagram, our little bubble
Yes.
on
Yeah.
YouTube is like this big, and then everyone else is like this, and they have no idea what's going on down here. And we think this
Right.
is
Yeah.
everything, but the guys that go to Shields, it looks like I'm just doing it. The guys that go on Shields and all that stuff, they're the vast preponderance of gun owners, and they
Hmm.
have no idea, or no idea is probably too strong nowadays. I think 10 years ago, no idea would have been accurate. Nowadays, I think they have an inkling of what's going on in this little bit. But
Right.
sometimes we get a little lost in the sauce of
Yeah.
what.
It is. It is so interesting. Yeah. Talking to PSA has been interesting because like we make holsters for their dagger, and we just don't sell holsters for the dagger because the T-Rex clientele is not buying PSA daggers in very large quantities. PSA is selling daggers in extremely large quantities. So there's definitely a mismatch between like the T-Rex market and the PSA market,
Yeah.
in terms of like market share capture. That night vision idea there, that question, that's a fascinating question. I do feel like all my friends own night vision, all my enemies own night vision, but there's
Never use a laser aiming module. I'll instantly get
yeah,
orbital striked by
there'll be
a
an AC
whatever.
130 up there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there is another aspect to it as well, which is analog image intensifier tubes are pretty rare on the ground, but like various cameras that see into the IR spectrum, security cameras do, a lot of camcorders do, a lot of cell phone cameras, actually cheap cell phone cameras are more likely to do it than the flagship cameras are. So like the ability to detect laser aiming modules is a bit more than the tubes that are out there, but yeah, it still is I don't think the American criminal elements are using these as much as like Eastern European guerrillas
Yeah.
and Taliban guys in the old days, like pulling filters out of little Sony handy cams and using those to look for IR strobes in the mountains.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that kind of brings up a good point because I haven't really thought about how I do my process to this level. But a way that I've kind of just realized how to put it now is to not take things and take the easy answer, right? So, for example, with the night vision, easy answer is passive is all you'll ever be able to use because night vision is prolific. And obviously, it's more complicated than that. And that spawned a
Yeah.
whole like 6 videos where I looked at how lasers actually look downrange. Not going to get into it too much, but lasers don't look like they do most of the time on Call of Duty, where it has that definitive line because it's a laser, so it's in phase.
They don't do magical. They don't do magical Hollywood smoke machines on your range. Like,
yeah.
wow.
I mean, sometimes it's dusty enough, or sometimes the laser is power enough that you see the laser, but fundamentally it's in phase, so it's stacking and hitting dust particles out on the way to the target. But you as an observer are looking at it from the side, so you don't see that. So a lot of assumptions are wrong. So that led to a whole series of videos. But another one that I kind of want to discuss is people look at Ukraine, they see drones, knee-jerk reaction in the comment section. Drones are it. That's it. Drones. What? Why ever even step out of the house? You're going to get hit by a drone. It's like, why go to the grocery store? The drone's going to come out of the bananas, like whatever. But obviously, like if we take a look at that, like a lot of the fundamental assumptions that were not even made in the first place is Ukraine is not in great shape, but it's a state actor and it's got a state apparatus behind us. How many people in the United States have the ability to manufacture an FPV drone at this time? How many people could be spun up to that point in a preparedness scenario? People assume that DJI Mavics are the ones carrying the bombs and they have to be the expensive ones because I have a DJI Mavic and half the time that thing is complaining about firmware updates. There's no way I can strap a bomb to that without it just falling out of the sky. The list goes on, right? So I'm kind of getting into that ADD autism right now where like one simple question, like when you rip it apart.
Creates a whole tree.
Has a whole tree. And then we got into that and now my friend has a UAV or is working on a UAV fixed wing drone, right? And that has a lot of capability, but he's a mech E. He's a practicing mech E. He has the ability to program and all this stuff. And the more we do that, the more I question it's like, no, a lot of the assumptions that we've made from a preparedness standpoint, at least in the United States, is, most people probably won't have access to drones at the level that we see. But the flip side is you can buy a $4,000 thermal, Mavic. So at least from the detection standpoint, it's quite impressive.
Yeah. Now my hope is, and this kind of goes back to something that I can't remember if we talked about it yet or we talked about it before we started recording, but the kind of the manufacturing side. It's like, this is something that I want to see a lot of people get on in this citizen to defense space. I think we need to have a lot more local drone manufacturing capability, which means not just like we tell our YouTube audience to buy a Mavic or to buy a Zenstone or to buy like whatever the other cheap Chinese knockoff isn't tariffed at the moment. But like we tell people hey, go into figuring out this drone manufacturer thing so that in 15, 20 years, we actually have the ability to build ESCs here or whatever. You actually do go get your mechanical engineering degree so that you can be a part of a more helpful part of a larger citizen defense industry. And that is a very unfun message. Like that is not cool or fun. It is not a good takeaway from a YouTube video that you should go spend the next however many years of your life getting a mechanical engineering degree so that if things go really bad, you will have already built a drone company that is also not fun. Like this is not as cool as going out and shooting stuff.
It goes back to that thing you mentioned earlier about like thermals are a really important capability, but it's a little too expensive and a little too hard to kind of get into that space, and it does incredibly poorly as a result. And the drones and comms are the same thing, right? A Baofeng's easy. Learning how to encrypt like hardware encrypt some of these radios that you can get is one of the most, root canal tier processes of all time. It's got to get an Arduino, and you got to or spend an exorbitant amount of money. You got to program the thing, and then at the end of the day, it's like, oh, I don't have friends. Who the hell am I talking to? Right? Like so.
Yeah. Everyone is very short-term focused. Right? I'm like, we got to figure thermal out. So. A whole list of videos on how to begin germanium crystal breeding furnaces. So we got to start from the beginning, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I get maybe a counterpoint to that. I do get it because the firearms industry is really hardcore sometimes, and at the end of the day, most people aren't you or me. They have their 9 to 5 jobs, and my God, at the end of a 9 to 5 job, I really don't want to nerd out on something like that. So
Yeah.
that's something I've been pushing a lot as well. It's like firearms need to be about 80% entertaining, 80% fun. So you have left over for that 20, 30, whatever that arbitrary number is
Yeah.
to really dedicate yourself to it. Because if you approach it from the perspective of 100% serious, unless you have like some serious, like, 1% nerd syndrome going on, you're going to burn out in about 1 to 2 years. And we see it. That's why the firearms industry is so
Mhm.
sick. Like, it's because a lot of times the message is really aggressively towards serious, to go, 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 go. Um, and we're having fun, right? Like a lot of this is
Mhm.
also
Yeah.
entertaining. Learning stuff is fun. Shooting guns is pretty cool. So if we can blend that
Yeah.
two together, I think that's where the biggest payout's going to be because the normal person doesn't have. I mean, I'd like to think I'm a normal person at least back then. Now I obviously have way more funds, but even now it's hard to spend, which is a lot of times you have to discover things for yourself. You have to spend a lot of money, and that's very difficult for the normal person to do. So if you can attach that fun to
Yeah.
it, which is why I understand why the unfun things don't get as much eyeball time. Sorry, that
Mhm.
was a bit
Yeah.
of a tangent.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good call though, because once it does sort of become your day job, it's really easy for you to say like 8 hours a day gets me to here, and you should be here too.
Mhm.
And most people don't have the 8 hours a day to do the thing. So I have tried to really, I don't know, simplify stuff and not push too hard. But like I think that Lucas has had a lot of pushback from people as well, where like Lucas shoots at a super high level that is 100% attainable if you pour that amount of time and money into it. And not everybody can realistically do that. And so having there be more accessible, more fun things associated with that, that does resonate with people a lot better. And the mission stuff as well. There's ways where you can be better prepared for certain things or better able to solve certain problems without hitting that 100%, being that 99th percentile gunfighter.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think to a degree, we can see both occurring. Maybe we're treading a little bit of ground here, but you know, it's okay to start with something fun and then kind of because that's how I started, right? And I think that's how
Yeah.
everyone started. I think you mentioned Lucas, right? He's very clear. He was playing Battlefield and Call of Duty at some point, and that morphed into something. And
Yeah.
there's baby steps along the way, and that's kind of something I have like on my Excel sheet. I have stuff like tenants that I don't want to forget, and it's a reminder that um, we all started somewhere, and it's got to kind of progress from that. So, be it night vision being something you do that is initially really cool and it opens your eyes to the capability, and then you get interested in it, and then it that click happens, and you become serious about it, right? No one is going to be accosted into taking this seriously. That's just not how it works. Humans can't
Yeah.
sustain high level effort and interest, the level of interest required to craft your own drone, from 3D printed parts, or to program that stupid XTS 2500 with an Arduino that costs,
Unless you're Tim
500.
Hoffman. Tim
Yeah.
Hoffman can, yeah.
Yeah. There are very few people that have that. So it has to also have that fun component.
Yeah.
And it's really easy for me to forget that when the craft of making a video is fun in and of itself. So I don't mind doing that. Um,
Sure.
but
That's a good
for the
point.
normal person, like that fun component always has to remain. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make sense to go out to the range, drive 2 hours to go out to the range, spend all day of one of your precious days on the weekend, which is usually meant to clean up the house or something, right? Like I remember how it is, and then spend what are we talking about, like $300 in ammunition now out of your own pocket, and you're never going to see that again, and that skill is probably going to atrophy within 2 months.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
it's a really
Yeah.
brutal proposition that we need to remember as um, content creators, that the cost of entry is getting higher and higher because the barrier,
Yeah.
the low end and the high end of skill expectation has moved drastically up, um, from where we once were.
Hmm.
So I don't know. This
Well, you
conversation is
do have
going on a journey. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I was gonna say, let's circle back to your poli sci and philosophy stuff, because the other way that you do it is you can guilt people into being better prepared to take care of their fellow man, perhaps, or something like that. Well, part of the thing that we've talked about a lot recently with the Range Day app, we made the training app so that it is to just remove as much friction as possible, so that anything that is complicated or not fun, like keeping track of scores or thinking up drills, like make that as easy as possible, because yeah, it is kind of a burden. And then the next upcoming updates to the app is going to allow it to you can really easily share drills with friends and have friends in the app that you're going out to shoot with, because doing this with people is another like that is a thing that does make it extremely fun. That adds a considerable fun component to the cost and everything that's negative about it.
No, that app is really cool and stuff like that because, yeah, bringing more people is fun, but my God, the shenanigans just go off the chart for exponentially or whatever, every person you add. And by the time you get to person 3, like we've done 2 drills and now we're showing off if we can bump fire with our belt, right? Like, so having something
Exactly.
to
Yeah,
keep you on track is really nice, especially scorekeeping, right? Because it's actually a major pain in the butt to calculate hit factor
it is,
and
and
stuff like that.
it's terrible if you use some of the other tools. Like there are other tools that are out there, and I don't mean to just like run them down, but I'm gonna be honest with you. If there were good tools out there, we would not have made the Range Day app. Like it would that was not a fun thing to make. That was not a thing where it was just like, yeah, I just want one of these of our own. No, it was like this has to be better. There has to be a better way to do this. So
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I'm guilty of it too. We're practicing for a match coming up here with handgun stuff, so we're shooting at IPSC style targets, and it's Alpha Charlie's. We're getting the time, and about 2 drills in, we're just like Alpha Charlie, whatever. That was a good enough time. Do you want to you want to put it in the Excel sheet that we've made? No, screw it. Like dead
yeah,
reckoning. That's good enough. It's too much work to do hit factor.
yeah. So tools that make things simpler. Try to get people a little more community focused. They're doing things together. Doing things together always makes things more fun. I mean, theoretically, usually makes things more fun. It lets you add more of your, Saturdays for me are for spending time with family, spending time with friends. In a lot of ways, I'm spoiled because a whole lot of my friends work at T-Rex, so I'm already like doing fun community type stuff throughout the week. But a lot of folks, that is not the case. And so spending time with friends is what your weekends are for. So if we can get more people involved in the hobby and it's easier and more fun to do the stuff together, then that also opens the door to do things like do stuff with comms, because now you have friends to talk to theoretically. So yeah, it's all part of my ulterior motive to get people to think about radios more seriously.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love. I'm a big fan of radios. All my kit has radios integrated. I bring all the radios to NRAM, and it's like, "What booth are you at?" And it's like he turned it off. God. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah,
There's always I have such high hopes for using radios to coordinate people with events, and it always just turns back into signal chat. It just
yeah.
is it's just what happens. Um, I'm actually working on this with my kids because my kids don't have cell phones yet, so they sometimes they have little low rock communicator devices because that's the only thing they have that then it's cool. Um, how was the NRA show, by the way? I did not go.
Yeah. It was my first one. I'll be honest. I mostly went because afterwards we were going to go scuba diving, and I wanted to do that more, and I wanted to test if I could drive across the
Oh
United
yeah,
States with a van. NRA itself, I mean, it was fine. It's like a more chill shot show with everything you've already seen, right? There's only a couple things
right.
that you will not see. I figured out apparently halfway through you could actually just buy stuff on the floor. I didn't even realize that until like 4 minutes until the end of day 2, or my last day
Yeah,
rather. So you can do that. A lot of the stuff is we've seen it already.
yeah.
But yeah, it's a more chill. To me, it was a. I mean, I guess I'm sure you've been to somewhere more, so it's more for the
I
viewer. But it's
haven't
a more
been
chill
to.
shot
I've
show.
never been to that one, but
Okay.
so yeah, it's been on my to do list. I really like the GOA show. They started their first show last year, and I'll be going again this year. And then I am at Shot Show. I've had differences with the NRA, and the last few times. I don't know why I've never been. It just has never worked out timing wise, and then I forget that it's happening until it's the week of.
Yeah, yeah. If you go to like from a practical standpoint, you can go to SHOT Show and not need to go to NRA. In terms of product stuff, like the one or two things that you'll notice, you'll probably pick up on like a TFB Showtime video or something
Yeah.
like that. But it is also entertaining. It's a lot more casual, and that is nicer as well. I think because SHOT Show is a little
Well,
bit of a
you
cluster. It's all gas.
Shot Show is Shot Show is weird. I have a love-hate relationship with Shot Show because I love that it is more than just a product show now. There's a lot more going on with Supplier Showcase, and people are using it as a meetup. So there's little other communities like the 3D printed gun community that come to SHOT Show, even though they're not allowed to exhibit. This is the place to come and hang out and
Yeah,
talk to other people, like some of the some of the advocacy groups or the ATF as an industry partner. They have a booth downstairs. They're always fun to talk to. Um, so I love that SHOT Show is becoming more things, but it also just makes it even more disorganized.
yeah. No, I love that component of SHOT Show is of meeting people that you've talked to,
Mhm.
shit posted on Instagram with all year, and then you finally get to see them in person, and be able to talk to them, put the face, shake hands, lose $50 at the
Yeah.
blackjack table, right? Like that. That's fun, and the floor itself isn't terrible. It's just your feet hurt really bad after 3 days of that.
Acres and acres and acres of booths. Yeah, it's kind of amazing.
And Ram, you're done in 40 minutes. Like the initial like search, like
Oh,
you can,
okay.
yeah, it's like a third of the main floor of SHOT Show, roughly in
Yeah.
size.
Okay. Yeah. Well, meeting people is well, I don't want to say always fun. Meeting people is almost always fun. I definitely I feel like I'm curious to see how this goes in the future, but right now, I don't know where you're at. I'm the right level of famous or notorious at SHOT Show. Like nobody knows who I am except people that I already want to talk to. Like I've hit the sweet spot. So like radio people and thermal people and that kind of folks will reach out and be like, "Hey Isaac, I want to show you a thing." And it's always a thing that I want to see. As opposed to like Lucas is much more famous. There's people out there like watching some of the other gun tubers go around is like, man, you can't get anything done on this place.
Yeah,
So
I
where
imagine
where do
that is
you
not
fall in
very
the
fun. Like he's
spectrum?
he's got to wear a PSR mask going around or something like that because I can't imagine you can be very productive as someone of his
Yeah.
worthiness. Um, I don't know. Enough people notice me that I always run out of patches day one at SHOT Show that give out.
Mm.
They're like, "Holy shit, Brass Facts, what's up?" I'm like, "Yo, what's up?" So that from that perspective, I'm known well enough that it does. I wouldn't say it's a problem. It's like very honoring to be recognized in
Yeah.
public, especially since I don't quite. My brain hasn't made the click that I'm apparently well known in public, or SHOT Show, I should say, not in public.
Yeah.
So there's that. I think, a percentage of booths recognize who I am. But I'm there mostly on my own, thing. I'm not doing interviews. I'm not doing any of that. So it doesn't really lead to too much. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a half answer.
Yeah. Well,
So
I
it's
don't
still,
know.
it's still very, I can still be very functional to say kind
Yeah.
of more like closer to you than to Lucas for sure.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I think it's a great place to be because it actually helps you be more productive. There's a bunch of people that I wouldn't know that they have this new product or they thought about this new thing, but it's the odds that they have heard about T-Rex, recognize the badge, see my face from a video about comms or thermals. It's been very helpful, super super efficient. I recommend this to people. It's a good way to get more out of SHOT Show is be somewhat known by the clientele that you're specifically wanting to look out for.
Yeah, so if
But
you
I
want to
will say,
maximize your SHOT Show 2026 experience, go ahead and start a YouTube channel, amass at least 20 million views, and it'll be a great
you're on
time.
your way, son. Yeah, I did get recognized. There was a big. I forget exactly what it was now, but there was a big law enforcement event at DC. So there were a ton of cops down on the mall, and one or possibly two of them recognized me. And I'll tell you right now, I don't really want to be recognized by law enforcement inside Washington D.C. I was totally kosher. There was nothing on me that shouldn't have been on me, but I still was like, oh, this is. I hope I don't have warrants here. This is a bad town to have warrants in.
Yeah,
But no,
yeah.
they knew who T Rex was. So
I've been
It
recognized
was
by
all right.
cops in my, locale before. Like I
Yeah.
was walking home from I don't even know what I was doing, whatever. And a cop car went past me and then U-turned and I'm like, pulls up. You brass facts? Yeah. Cool. Love you. Like
Yeah.
it was funny. It was great. And then I think he
Yeah.
came around and we talked in my parking lot, but um it's a weird sensation. Like I think
Yeah.
from their perspective, they're just dudes, right? But obviously,
Oh, for
it's a
sure.
little
Yeah.
weird to be approached by law enforcement,
Yeah.
especially as a gun owner in the state of certain things.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so here's an interesting thing. I don't know. This is not a question. This is just a weird thing. There's a ton of guys who are probably somewhere between our ages. There's a ton of guys who are, um, a lot of them are combat vets. They're guys who grew up watching the Magpul DVDs and they've gone into law enforcement and they are some level of familiar with and comfortable with firearms, but they also often have these jobs that don't really line up with their current interests or even necessarily hobbies. And in some ways, those are going to be some of the best cops because they're actually going to train on their own dime and on their own time. Like they're actually going to be more proficient at certain skills. But yeah, there's also a slight awkwardness there in certain types of situations. So I've had some really cool conversations with law enforcement about our shared interests and hobbies. And then they've told me about some stuff that is incredibly uncool right immediately afterwards. And so, yeah, as a philosophical conversation, like that's kind of an interesting one. It's very easy to be double-minded about stuff if you're not careful or thinking about it. And I would say that if you're in law enforcement, you're going to feel you're already going to have like some level of interest in GunTube and weapons and hardware and gear and equipment. Like it's the days of the I don't know. I feel like the older generation of law enforcement officers who knew how to drive cars and they like never fired their duty weapon except once a year at quals. Like I feel like that time is kind of past. The people who are going to the academy now are some level of interested in this world. And yeah, it's kind of interesting change.
That's a whole podcast in and of itself. If you could get some
That's
like
a can of worms.
because I
That's a
remember,
whole
there's the we'll just call them FUDs. Like it's not the correct terminology, but the OG, like you described, cops. And then I remember distinctly, maybe it's over exaggerated, but the global war on terror kicked off, and around the surge timeframe, we were seeing a lot of cops that, the stereotype was couldn't quite get make it through basic, or didn't go join the army and
yeah,
is now living out his army fantasies as a law enforcement officer. And we saw maybe more so the perception than the actual, but the
yeah,
perception of increased police brutality, the militarization of police was a big thing that came out, especially as free or heavily discounted stuff from the war came about.
hmm
And that was a big thing. And then we obviously had the kind of progression into the, what do we even call it? I think the name is like Summer of Love, whatever it's called, right? And the fallout from that, which
yeah.
really degraded the
Fiery but peaceful. Yeah,
yeah. Really, in my opinion, probably degraded the quality of cops, not necessarily
yeah.
by, uh, more so because the type of cop that you want is no longer going to join an institution that has that kind of stigma, or less so, and less
Right.
quantity.
There were a bunch of guys, there were a bunch of principled guys that left over COVID stuff. Then
That too.
there were a bunch of senior guys, the guys who were in the higher pay bracket were the first guys to get cut during the defund the police things. So they're like those two hits and then what you just mentioned, like after kind of that black eye, just
Yeah.
their recruiting is going to be out of a slightly different pool.
Yeah, and that's probably the worst part, right? The next generation has been contaminated, or like you're not pulling from the people you probably want to be cops, right? Because
Yeah.
if you see that and after through all that and you still want to be a cop, either you're probably not that, at least for me, not the type of person I want a cop, or you're very highly motivated, and so that at least that part. But that guy was always going to be a cop. So there's that, and then you mentioned we're kind of in the recovery period of that, and because the civilian, I keep saying civilian, because the citizen kind of, I guess, defense industry, the people interested in the Second Amendment, that bar is going up at a staggeringly fast rate, right? It's
Yeah.
like people
Yeah.
forget how garbage we were as a community in 2014 with our zombie EOTechs and stuff like that. And the only way we could openly talk about preparedness was like, well, zombies, right? And everyone's like, well, it's an
Yeah.
allegory for shooting, other people. But
Oh yeah, people on forums will be like, "Shh, stop talking about how it's possible to get a suppressor. You don't want to get like, could you just
yeah.
quiet down?" Yeah.
So
No,
so
it's kind of
yeah,
fascinating how far we've come.
so it's got very normalized. And then on top of that, I think skill is being pushed higher and higher. Um, it's a really cool thing to see, absolutely. But that's where cops come from most of the time. So it's like you said,
Yeah.
we're probably in a new phase now where, each generation of cops is a little different. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. That's, like I said,
Yeah.
a whole ass topic
The
could be.
whole thing. Yeah. And we should, so that is speaking of videos that we want someone else to make. Like I would like someone who is not me to open that can of worms and do some serious like interviews with new recruits and older guys, and that would be a fascinating, not like an academic study, but that'd be a fascinating bit of journalism that somebody should go do. um just look at some different stuff, and it's going to be different in different places. Like I know guys who got into law enforcement specifically to help their local rural communities because they saw needs there. They were doing other other stuff, and they just said, boy, the sheriff's department actually has a much bigger need than this other place that I'm working. So that happens too. So I think it's going to be different across all these different types of jurisdictions and situations. But yeah, it's also rough out there. So this is the other thing is, I don't know what your neck of the woods is like, but crime is very low in the United States if you avoid just a very small number of spots. But if you are law enforcement, you deal almost exclusively with criminals, and that gives you a very different perspective on the world. That gives you a very different look at the world than most of us have. So a lot of times, that difference, not seeing eye to eye on things, is another area for contention or missing each other's point. Just
Yeah.
another wrinkle to add to that whole can of worms that we're not opening on this podcast by any means.
Yeah, yeah. Now there's a guy in my Discord, because I've been doing this not for a very long time, but long enough that this person has gone through, I believe, college, and then is now, went into law enforcement, had a huge number of issues getting in, and now he's in, and this is his first like 6 months doing it, and
Okay.
he's hiding. He's obviously not spelling it out. He doesn't want to get doxxed or anything, but he's talking about it. I'm like, this guy is in downtown Baghdad, dude. Like, what the hell is this? It's like, oh no, worse. American
Yeah.
cities. So
Yeah. I mean,
it's surprising.
even small towns like where we are, like there are some rough things that happen. And yeah, as a regular guy, you don't have to deal with that. Like it rarely comes up. But if you carry a badge, that's what you got to deal with. That's like the first thing that you realize is what the underbelly looks like.
Yep, yep. As well, not to use the word privilege, but like we are insulated quite heavily from a lot of the
Yeah.
bad that goes on day to day, and yeah, it can kind of color your viewpoint of the world for sure.
So I have a theory, and nobody likes this theory but me because it's unpleasant. But
Here comes the Isaac Button theory.
I really like the olden days where you have a sheriff and he does not have a whole lot of muscle. He does not have a whole lot of resources. And then when he needs them, he deputizes regular dudes. Now, this requires that the regular dudes in his town have skills and character and are deputizable. But when that happens, you get a couple things. Number one, you don't have excess capacity, excess policing capacity. But the other thing is, guys like us don't live our whole lives completely isolated or insulated from what's going on in our communities. So I feel like in order for that to work, you have to have a high level of citizenry in multiple ways.
Yeah.
Um, But if you do have that, then you have this benefit. You have this benefit of a deputizable citizenry who can actually deal with stuff, and they end up much more plugged into their community and contributing more than if it is these strata, these social strata that you never go into. And we hire these guys, and our county needs a fair amount of these guys to manage stuff that I don't want to see or think about. Like it yeah, nobody likes this theory. I don't like this theory, but ideally, I think this is how it should work.
Yeah, I think ideally that'd be great, but then you run into, like, I think in a small community, it could very much be possible. But as you
Mhm.
scale up, to interrogate the idea, I guess, as you scale up, like, you only need one bad time where a dude completely, like,
Yeah,
plugs
you
it
end
in.
up
It's like,
needing more. You end up needing more full-time pros. The larger your population density is, for sure. Um, so in the next county over, Perry County, they actually did this or something like this for a while, where a lot of counties have volunteer deputies, and generally volunteer deputy programs don't work so well because they give you paperwork, and nobody wants to do that, so nobody hangs around. Also, it's kind of a bad use of resources because your volunteers are not trained to do paperwork, so it doesn't really work out. But in Perry County, they did this thing where the volunteers were guys who had a lot of time on their hands and spent a lot of time on the range with the SWAT team. So their volunteers were actually put on the SWAT team, and they never did like hospital transfers or scut work or paperwork. And the guys who were the deputies who had been through the academy and were getting paid 8, 12 hours a day, whatever the shifts were, they were the ones who did that stuff that they had been trained to do, and they didn't have time to train and be on the range. So like that's a very interesting dynamic that, depending on who you ask, worked very well or not very well. But
there's a subsection of the viewer base that is getting just moistening their pants right now of, like, I could get my nods out and go kick down some doors without having to go through anything. And
I mean, and here's the deal: there, these would be terrible circumstances, but there are 100% situations where I would take not an entirely random selection, but I would take a random selection of T-Rex employees over a random selection of certain police departments to go handle stuff. Like that is not an exaggeration. Uh,
Mhm.
that
But
is just kind of how things are.
unfortunately, the question is not a random selection of T-Rex arms employees. It's a random selection of the local population that has time with guns. So that makes it a
Correct. Yeah.
little harder of a sell.
Yeah.
But I like the idea in theory. In practice, that's going
Yeah.
to be something that is a little tough. That's kind of cool with the SWAT thing you mentioned, though, for sure.
Yeah. So like again, it requires you have a high level of citizen capability, but it also requires that you have a high level of relationship. Like the sheriff has to know and trust these guys to some level, and they have to know and trust him for some level too. Because like you could have a high level of citizen who are like, "Oh no, this is the bad sheriff from Silverado. We don't follow him. Like we don't go do his dirty deeds with him."
Yeah, yeah, it's yeah. I'm just seeing the liability of just one bad incident and how that's going to precipitate. Or
Oh yeah, no, you can't get there today.
yeah,
You
no,
have so much work to do to get to that point. But that is the way that it used to work, like not
okay,
just back in the old west, but that's the way that it used to work, in even in civilized places in the past. Um and to be perfectly honest, like if my sheriff came to me and is like, "I need your help." I would be like, "I'm here to serve the community. What do you need?" And if he said, "I need you to do hospital transfers because we can't hire another $8 an hour guy," I'd be like, "Oh, well, I'm busy. Sorry." Like,
have you tried
I'm out.
Chat GPT?
Yeah, but if the sheriff candidate is like, "Look, we have a life or death situation, and all the kids in the elementary school are in grave danger, and I need you to put yourself in absolutely horrifying risk to save them," I'd be like, "I am already on my way, sir." Like, so this is the kind of thing that I think that the people would like to help out with, and
Yeah,
not with taking people to the hospital, taking mental patients to the hospital because they don't fit in the jail anymore. Like
yeah.
that is not a fun job. I would
I
rather
think
pay someone
there's
to
probably
do
a
that, sir.
realistic in between version of that where you free up train cops to go do stuff like during a disaster
Yeah.
scenario, and you do, something, in between that. I don't want to call it menial cop duty, like doing paperwork, not at that
Right.
tier, but the tier above, like, I don't know, intersection duty, not waving cars through, but keeping an eye out in an area or something like that. And
Yeah.
that could be an interesting intermediate ground for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it could be, there's a way to develop it slowly in this direction where it is a little bit like volunteer fire, where there is very specific training and the training is, properly vetted and there's test scores and stuff like that. But I don't know. But we're getting a little bit. Yeah, my theoretical question that we weren't going to get too into, or we're kind of getting too into.
We're
So
getting into, yeah. I mean, that's. I mean, since this video is about talking about how I come up with topics, that's a large part of it. It's just
yeah,
talking about a topic way more than it should be. But I think that's the interesting thing as content creators. Viewers sometimes say it's like, why are you so into this stuff, or why are you like you're like, the term is autistic, right? Like, why are you so locked in on this? Like, where's the normal person? It's like, well, here's the thing. As a content creator, as someone interrogating this idea, I feel like I don't have the right not to go all in on the thing, right? I'm not a normal
sure,
person
yeah,
by any means. Like, I should go all in. That's a huge thing that really me off when I see other gun tubers do this. They'll like begin to approach an idea. So it's like FRTs can be useful to build up, blah, 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 and at the end, but I'm just a gun tuber, so what does it matter? It's like, no, like you don't have you should go all in, right? That's your job. You have the time to go all in on it. You're presenting an idea to an audience. When they're done, the video goes away. Like, they don't have to deal with you afterwards. Like, you should
yeah,
really interrogate ideas to the fullest, so your viewer doesn't necessarily have to, or they can see a different perspective, right?
yeah,
So that highlight that's what I want to see out of my YouTubers, be
right,
it like engineers talking about, like, I love watching this channel, Alex the OK, where he just goes and talks
hmm
for 2.5 hours about some really, like, I don't know, the fly-by-wire system in an F-16 or something like that, right? Like, I don't want him wimping out at the last second. It's like, but that's boring stuff. It's like, no, I came here to listen to engineering stuff. Or so when I go on to a GunTube channel,
yeah,
it's like, we're talking about the Scar 16 today. I want off the walls, like, information here. I don't want you to wimp out and, couch your opinion or whatever. Although, to be
yeah.
fair, I'm guilty of that. So, a little bit of a
I do that too. I suddenly just pictured a hilarious documentary that now I want to watch, where the host of the documentary is like, this is going to be the definitive film about Moto, or this is going to be the definitive film about the Ferrari. But I don't care about Ferraris. I'm already bored. I'm already done. And then the sound guy comes on, and sound guy holding the boom is like, well, I like Ferraris. I want to talk about Ferraris now. And then we just follow him around as he geeks out about a thing that he loves, because that would be
yeah,
so much better. Yeah, no,
yeah.
I think that podcast conversations are a great place to, like, open the can of worms a little bit and be like, no, somebody
Well,
should
no,
do this.
that stinks. I don't want that can of worms. They're like, oh,
Ooh, yeah.
this might be something. Yeah, yeah.
But the video should be like, we're gonna open this, like, we're gonna intro this topic, and we're gonna cover it to a natural conclusion, or a good stopping spot, or the next jumping off spot, or the next branch point. That's what this video is gonna be. And yeah. And GunTube is not a small place. So I think that there's a lot of value in finding something that isn't being done, a topic that isn't being covered, something that isn't being tested, something that isn't being tried, and giving it a shot.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe. I don't know. Sometimes I have the exact opposite reaction of GunTube feels really small sometimes. The actual, like, hardcore
That's true too.
Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's both, right? Some days it's just this massive thing. And then other days you became really painfully aware of how small it actually is. Wait a minute, like, I can count on all of my hands, like, all the above 100K, sub channels that are actually putting out content, that are pulling in views, that aren't just doing entertainment. They're actually, like, pushing towards
Yeah.
reviews, ideas, or whatever. And it's like, wow, this is much smaller than I thought. Like, this is a small pond. And then some days, it's an
Yeah.
ocean. So, but it depends what the conversation is about.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it's very interesting. I'm going to chicken out, because I sometimes feel like, yes, I am part of GunTube. I made a video about, this, and a bunch of people watched it. Then at times I'm like, no, no, I have a day job. I'm not, I don't have to. I don't have to be emotionally invested in this. I'll just make a video if I feel like it.
That's some bad news. Yeah, I think you may in fact be part of it, considering how often your videos show up on my Discord or your thoughts
Okay, yeah.
end up driving conversation. Not to use the word community. Apparently, we don't do that anymore. But in a group,
Oh, okay.
I'm
Yeah, yeah,
pulling your leg a bit. But in terms of you know, a group of people that are discussing topics and interested in a certain thing, I think you are absolutely heavily involved, at least in that sense, like thought leader, right? We don't like to use the word influencer, but
right, yeah,
thriving discussion, I guess, right?
yeah. Thought leader just seems so grandiose. Like, what do you do? Oh, I lead in the area of thought. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
the big thinks.
THOT,
Yeah.
yeah, leading the area of thought. Um,
Oh no.
yeah, no, it's a terrible, yeah. Like, I did watch the admin results video before this to see what I was getting myself into, to kind of see the
Yeah.
format and feel. And yeah, no, it's no one wants to be called an influencer or a thought leader or anything, but
Yeah.
it's our job to autism out over topics and really go
Yeah.
into a level that the normal person can't because it's not their job, or they're just not that interested in it. And yeah, I would say you occupy a pretty decent component of that sphere.
It's a neat place to be. I do feel like I've been really blessed by a couple of different things. Number one, I got started in the gun area very young because my dad was making videos back in the VHS days.
Okay.
So I have this longer track record, and then um, T Rex has a very high. Again, like T Rex is so tiny. Like our audience versus like PSA's market share is like unbelievably tiny. But because we touch on so many different things, because we do body armor and medical and education, and we now have night vision and thermal and so forth, um, we talk to a lot of the gun industry. And now we've been around for 10 years as T Rex, or 11 years. So we've had a lot of opportunities to get to know people and build relationships and so forth. So, yeah, I feel like we are in a really fun, unique place
Yeah.
where you can go to SHOT Show and get meetings with people, but also walk around without getting mobbed by people. Like it's kind of nice to be where we're at and to be blessed with a position where there's a lot of people who really appreciate things that I feel like are really basic or that we haven't even mastered yet. And people come up and are incredibly complimentary about quality control and holster stuff and thoughtfulness about this, or even just fast shipping. Like now I think pretty much everybody's caught up with fast shipping, but when we really made an effort to ship quickly, our warehouse stuff, it still felt like a lot of the gun industry had not caught up with Amazon or was even trying to, or even noticed that Amazon was doing 2-day shipping. And so everybody was optics planeting a little bit back in those days. So I feel like people really appreciate us doing basic stuff. And I appreciate the ability to have that opportunity to jump in and try to execute on that and so forth. So even when it is really basic stuff, it is fun when you can actually accomplish it and be like, yes, we actually have stuff going out same day. I had no idea how to do that, but we did actually, we knew it was possible because other people were doing it and kind of figured it out. And so like that level of accomplishment, and then people notice that and appreciate that is just it's pretty tremendous. Like I'm so grateful to folks that they have participated in T-Rex for this long, that we've made able to reach this level of like what is normal in other industries.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, from a content perspective, moving a little bit away from the business thing. I think this is a good example of when the pond feels really small versus big. Like T-Rex arms in the big pond is like, you go to SHOT Show and those big rooms, those aren't for you. That's for Shields, right? And
Right. Oh
like
yeah.
we ain't like I'm less than nothing, and T-Rex is like this little tiny fish. But in terms of that smaller community, that really serious group of people that I think, depending on what happens, are going to be the community leaders, the force multipliers that kind of spread the ability to people that know about tactical gear but might not, in the moment have that skill built up, of that smaller community, that one where, and it's on Instagram, I guess it's on X, whatever it's called now. It's on the YouTube, more tactical side of things. From that
Yeah.
perspective, T-Rex arms, I think is Goliath. Is that the right word? Not to but you guys absolutely
Yeah.
do, sometimes for worse, a lot of times for better, push conversations in a certain direction. So it's interesting,
Yeah.
that big
Good.
small
Thank you.
pond dynamic. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was not fishing for compliments, but I'm tremendously grateful for, you know, I mentioned before, like I was wanting to really spend time on the practicality of your channel, how you determine what's practical. And I don't think we even asked that question, but
Oh, yeah.
I just really appreciate how practically focused you are on what it is that you do. Like your headset video that was like, let's figure out what's actually going to be good hearing protection as opposed to just these scenarios that may not be realistic for you. Or the FRT video, which I've continually, talked about how great that was. Like figuring out, how is this actually practical? What is this actually for? What is it actually good at? What do we actually need to do to even answer this question? Oh, we need to buy a belt fed upper receiver and deal with links.
I am a slave to the perfect video idea, taking it to that's
Yeah.
I have sheets right here with my video ideas, and the FRT one had multiple staples of and notes just piling up because that video was disastrous
Yeah.
from a back end perspective.
Oh yeah. Well, I
And
can
then I
see the
filmed the intro
video
in a
getting
bad.
more complicated as it grew. Like as I watched the video, it just continued to develop. Like it was, yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. Well, thank you so much for the work that you're doing, and thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been a super fun conversation. I'd love to figure out what other stuff that we could potentially do together, like other cans of worms that need opening, either in conversation or in video, or any other video ideas that we think of, like we could convince other people to make for us. That would probably be a good another good conversation to continue having. But keep up the good work, because I do think that this is important stuff. And I think it's great having a really sort of practical focus to some of these things. And yeah, just really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you. Likewise, actually. So